Good evening. It is Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023, and coming to you from Studio 1A and Lonely Tree Media headquarters in Yakima, Washington. This is the best Lamb Sports Show. Wrong button. So that button on page 2 is how you get to the other theme, but not this button because it's a different button. Anyway, so yeah, when you got multiple things going, sometimes you forget which page you're on, and then the world, all crap breaks loose. I'm your host, David Lamb. With me is my son Parker. Say hello, Parker.
Hello, Parker.
That's the right button.
That's the button you want.
It's the one that shocks all the seats in the audience. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook under the Best Lamb Sports Show. You can send us an email, lambsports@gmail.com, and please check out our webpage, which is lambsports.com. You can find links to the past shows and current trivia question on the website. This is college football. It is college football preview show. Ta-da-ta-da.
Finally.
Yeah, last Saturday was the last Saturday without college football until, almost February. January something.
Is that right?
Yeah, right? Yeah. It's the last Saturday without college football until like the middle of January. So, cool. Anyway, pretty excited. We're going to look at the preseason AP poll eventually. We're going to look at every Power 5 conference while we still have Power 5 conferences, because that may not be around for long. And we'll talk about that. Realignment is going to change all of college football next year. But first, we're going to start with 2 trivia questions. I found 2 good questions. So the 2 Stave and Stone trivia questions for the day. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Do we want to just ask them and answer them?
Sure.
Okay.
We can do that.
All right.
If I can.
If you can. Well, I mean, we'll see. Here's the first one. Only 2 teams in the preseason poll era, and that's from 1950 forward, have gone wire to wire as the number 1 team in the country, meaning they were number 1 every single week, preseason all the way to the end. Only 2 teams have ever done that. Can you name those teams? And maybe what year? Years, I guess, since it's 2 years.
All right, repeat the question one more time. I'm writing. I didn't write it down as you were saying it. I should have.
Only 2 teams in the preseason poll era from 1950 to now have gone wire to wire as the number 1 team in the country.
1950?
Yeah, since 1950, only twice has it happened. So, and I'll give you a little hint. You don't have to go back to 1950.
Oh, it's not that far back.
No.
Let's go with Alabama one year. One of those years they won a title.
Okay.
It wasn't a Clemson year. And let's go Florida. One of the years they won the title.
And so Bama and Florida are neither one correct.
Ow.
I know, right? So for 2 on that.
Are they not normally popular teams?
No, they're very popular. Very popular.
Okay. So then still like Michigan's, Ohio State's, things like that.
Very popular teams.
Oh, well, then not recently popular, I suppose. What's the most recent year?
Oh man, that's gonna give one away, isn't it? 2004.
No, it's not gonna give it away.
Oh, all right.
Jeez Louise.
If you know
2004.
If you know who was good.
Oklahoma.
See, that's a good guess. Oklahoma would have been right around that time frame too. It was really good. Except it's not Oklahoma.
Except it's not Oklahoma.
No.
Texas?
No. And that's another good guess because Texas was really good.
Right around that time.
Right around that time.
USC?
USC is the answer for 2004.
Oh, I started to say Reggie Bush era, and then I was like, wait a minute.
That is correct. The Reggie Bush era is right.
And what was the year of the other one?
1999.
Oh, man. Who won the title in 99?
Yeah.
Was it Tennessee?
No.
Tennessee won the title in 99.
In January of 99.
Oh, so it was the 98 season.
Correct.
Ending in 99.
Right.
I hate that. Just do it all in one.
I agree.
So who was the next year after that? I have. Give me a hint for a conference.
Okay, I'll give you a hint for a conference. They weren't in a
Or
conference. They were independent.
they were independent.
In
Notre Dame.
in 1999, they were independent.
It's not Notre Dame.
Nope.
The hell.
I know it's tougher that way, isn't it?
There's a couple of schools out there that kind of like BYU was really good for a while there. There are some other teams that didn't used to be in conferences that were it was alarming. Like you wouldn't think now were I don't know who is it.
Florida State.
See, that's what I was just saying.
Yeah.
There are some teams that are in conferences that you couldn't ever picture not being in conference.
Right. Florida State
But
used
it
to be
happened.
it used to be independent.
Do you think when Florida State joined the ACC that everyone all over the world went, "That's the end of college football,
Yeah,
as we know it"?
Kinda, and it was for a long time. Florida State was unbeatable in the ACC for a long time, and then
Yeah.
I want to say it was Virginia or somebody just had a gigantic upset one year. It was like the biggest deal ever in college football. Yeah, 1999, Florida State went wire to wire national champion. So there you go. But that was the time. That was the end of the time when Florida State was kind of dominant. Florida State and Miami were kind of the top two teams all the time. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was pretty exciting. Anyway, there you go. And then I have one more trivia question. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Since 1980, how many times has the preseason number one team lost its opening game?
Once.
That's you sure? Is that what you want to guess? One?
Um,
You think it's only happened one time?
I think it's only happened once.
It's actually happened 5 times.
It's still a low number.
It is still a low number. Yeah, it's 43 years worth. It's only happened 5 times. So here's the funny part. So 1981, Michigan was number one, lost to unranked Wisconsin, 21-14. 1984, Auburn was number one, and they lost to number 10 Miami, 20-18. In 1988, Florida State was number one and lost to number 6 Miami, 31-0. Here's the one that cracks me up. In 1989, Michigan lost to number 1 Notre Dame. And what had happened was the number 1 preseason team was Michigan, but Notre Dame played a game before Michigan played a game. So Notre Dame leapfrogged Michigan and became the number 1 team. When Michigan played them for their first game of the year, Michigan was number 2. But they lost to Notre Dame 24-19. And then in 1990, Miami, who was the number 1 team, beat BYU 28-21. Or lost to BYU 28-21. So Miami's been involved in 3 of them. They won one. They lost one as the number 1 team, and twice they beat the number 1 team on the opening weekend. So there you go. So it's got to require Miami, the Hurricanes, otherwise. And I don't think it's going to happen this year. Georgia's the number 1 team, and Tennessee Martin is probably not going to beat them on the 2nd of September. It's unlikely, and that's happening more and more. A lot of teams don't play those big games on the first weekend. So I was looking through the schedule. We'll talk about it a little bit. I was looking through the schedule of the non-conference schedule. It's kind of pathetic this year compared to past years. I don't think there's as many big games as I would like.
But yeah, I don't. And that's you're right. It's becoming a real common thing now. Is nobody takes chances early in the season.
Yeah, well, you don't want to lose to nobody, but you also don't want to get thumped by a team that you're going to be compared against later in the year.
Well, and that's exactly what it is, because back in BCS, because there was an algorithm that nobody understood. People started being really careful about who they played, and then when they added the college football playoff, everyone was like, "This is great," but there's only 4 spots, right. So I still am not going to take any chances. Right. So I think when it moves to 12, you'll see more teams take chances.
Yeah, maybe.
with because a loss doesn't sink it. 2 losses doesn't sink it. Like I can think of so many teams in the past 3 or 4 years who deserved to be in the playoffs, at least have a game to prove themselves.
Right.
But didn't get it because they had 2 losses, so they were never going to break into the top 4.
Right. Yeah.
So it's unfortunate. So yeah, hopefully more teams will let people take more chances because nobody does it anymore.
That's true. So let's remind everyone what happened at the end of last year, which was a big gigantic thud, and that was the sound of TCU's hopes and dreams crashing to the floor as Georgia walloped them. I mean, just destroy. That was the worst beatdown. And I thought that opening weekend Oregon loss to Georgia was humiliating. But to do it
Yeah.
in the championship game, to just lay an egg, give up 66 points in the championship game. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just, Georgia was clearly the best team in the country last year. There was really no doubt. But I didn't expect TCU to do that because they just got done beating Michigan by scoring 51 points in the semifinal. I know. Yeah. So, the two semifinals were classics. The TCU 51-45 win over Michigan and the Georgia 42-41 win over Ohio State were great games to watch. And then the championship game came and it was like, oh, this is terrible. And you could turn it off
Yeah.
after, 10 minutes. It was done.
It's boring.
It is boring.
I mean, it seems at times like Georgia has some recipe that you don't understand. They're incredibly good.
Yeah.
Like, and well, not to mention, it doesn't hurt when you had, what was that tight end's name? Washington, the guy who's like 6'8", like close to 300 pounds. You know what I'm talking about from last year? I'm not talking about Brock Bowers.
Not Bowers, the other one.
Yeah, the other guy.
Yeah.
The guy who constantly trucked over people. Because if you weren't throwing to this 5-star or that 5-star or Brock Bowers, who may be the greatest tight end in college football history, then you're going to throw it to the 6'8", 300-pound guy who
Right.
nobody could tackle. I will say their only deficit was their running game. Their running game was not that great. And it didn't matter, though.
Didn't need
beat
to
everyone.
be, yeah.
Beat the crap out of everyone. So
Didn't really need to be. And I can't tell you who that is off the top of my head. I don't have the name here. I'd have to go look. But, yeah, I don't remember who that was. But, yeah, Brock Bowers was the, all-world tight end. Who's back, by the way?
yeah.
Yeah.
His name was Darnell Washington.
Darnell Washington. That's it.
Darnell Washington. He was a third-round pick this year. He's 6'7", 265.
He's a big boy.
Yeah, he plays for the Steelers now. That is actually a good spot for him. But he has a play against the Oregon game where he absolutely stiff-armed like 3 guys and broke 2 tackles all in the process. Like, oh my goodness.
It's like tackling an offensive lineman. So
yeah, except a lineman who's got,
who can move
4.6 speed.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty ugly. All right. So let's delve into some conferences just because we're going to see who's out there and what the media in the conference media polls. I have all of those pulled up, so we'll see who's been voted to win. See if we agree with any of that.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's do that. Let's start with the ACC.
Okay.
So we start with ACC football. Last year's champion, Clemson, right? Which I think was every year's champion, right? Started the season as the number 4 team in the country last year. Ended as the 13th team in the AP poll. They suffered a couple losses, but in conference they were pretty well, dominant. And they played North Carolina in the championship game, beat North Carolina, who won the other. The other division is pointless, to be honest with you. Clemson and Florida State are in one division,
Right.
and then there's North Carolina in the other one. I think Miami's in the other one too, right? Nope, Miami's in with Clemson and Florida State.
Sounds right.
Yeah, I think. But anyway,
It kind of seems like this happens with all of these conferences where
one's loaded.
all the talent's in one side.
Yeah. The ACC had 5 teams ranked in the top 25 at the beginning of the season. At the end of the season, they had 3. Pittsburgh managed to jump in at number 22 after their bowl victory, but Florida State and Clemson were the only 2. Here's a nugget for you. Florida State finished the season number 11 in the AP poll. Didn't beat a single ranked team.
It's not surprising. How many did they play?
They played 3. They lost all 3. I don't understand how you can not beat a ranked team and yet you're still the 11th best team in the country. That means there's 14 ranked teams behind you, but you didn't beat any of them. So how do you tell me that you're better than everybody else when you didn't beat a single team that was any good? So they did beat LSU to start the season. That was a big win for them, right?
Yeah, but I mean UCLA did that.
Yeah, it's true. Anyway, it was weird. I don't know. The ACC is one of those conferences where I look at it not getting necessarily better. Florida State or Clemson is you're going to be probably your pick this year to win it. North Carolina is going to be an also ran because they still have Drake May, quarterback.
Right.
The rest of the conference is, what's the term I'm looking for? Mediocre
Okay.
at best.
Oh, they're just okay.
Yeah, and Duke. I think Duke has the most returning starters, 17 returning starters on the Duke team, and
Nice.
still
Okay.
they're not predicted to finish great.
Because returning starters doesn't necessarily mean success anymore.
Yeah, if you weren't good last year, just bringing the same people back doesn't help you.
In theory.
In theory, Louisville and Virginia both have 9 returning starters, so they are the smallest ones from last year. So it'll be interesting. It'll be the ACC is what the ACC is. It's Clemson, it's Florida State, and probably one more team. It's either Miami or North Carolina, or it's Pitt. It was Wake Forest for a little bit last year. I don't know if you had to pick one of those teams to win the ACC right now, who'd you pick?
Like including the one that you said you think would win it. Like any of them?
Any of them? Who would
Oh,
you? Who do you
then
think?
I pick Clemson.
You'd pick Clemson.
Yeah, Florida State seems to always drop short ever since what's his name left years ago. They always seem
Yeah.
to be good, but not good enough. So I expect that to continue. I see no reason why it wouldn't. I think Clemson's going to win it. They always have the most talent. And Klubnik was not bad last year.
He was
Like
not
towards
bad.
the end of last year, like after they benched DJU.
Yeah.
So he didn't play a ton, but he looked pretty good. The offense looked efficient, and not to mention they have the best thing, which is that they have a fantastic defense. They always do. I'd say that other team that you're thinking of, though, the other team that could challenge for it, though, I think you were right with UNC or Pitt. I think UNC's got Drake May, who's one of my underrated Heisman Trophy finalists in my book. But Pitt, I mean, Pat Narduzzi always seems to have a heck of a defense.
Yeah.
So good defenses can take you a long way.
They can. I don't know which one of those two teams I would pick if I had to pick a team. If you just came
If
down
you
to
couldn't
it.
pick Clemson and FSU, yeah,
Right,
then
I'm not-
you're left with one of the others.
Right. I just don't know who that would be right off the top of my head.
I feel like I'd go with UNC just because they have a tried and proven quarterback.
Right.
I feel
And
like
that's-
that would be the only reason why.
That's probably true. That's probably the right answer. I think I would take North Carolina too. I don't know. It's interesting to see their preseason player of the year is going to be Drake May. That's what the media says for ACC.
Yeah.
And Jordan Travis, the quarterback at Florida State, is second in that poll. By the way, I don't know. I'm not going to give Florida State any credit till they beat someone. They didn't do it last year, so you got to beat somebody who's ranked. You got to be any kind of good, I think. But clearly you can be at least 11th best without playing anybody. And then Will Shipley, probably going to be the top running back in that conference from Clemson.
Yeah.
And so Clemson will go as far as their defense and their running game goes. Yeah.
I mean, they definitely took a step forward. FSU definitely took a step forward last year because they were 5-7 the year before, 3-6 the year before that, 6-7 the year before that. So they weren't exactly on a great train ever since Willie Taggart took over. Hey, love that. So yeah, going to 10-3 is a pretty big move, but being 0-3 against good teams,
right,
kind of not so good.
Right.
You kind of need to win at least one of those, and then you go, okay. I mean, I don't know much about those games. Were they close games? Like the games that they lost, were they in them, or did they just get absolutely worked by the teams?
So they were in most of the games. One of those games was Clemson. Let me find the right spot here. So they lost to Wake Forest 31-21 at home. Yeah, I know, right? And
that doesn't seem good. Yeah.
And Wake Forest is okay. I mean, they were okay. They lost to North Carolina State at North Carolina State, 19-17, right. And then they lost to Clemson at home, 34-28. So they lost, and it was 3 straight games. They played them back to back to back, but 2 of them were at home. So I feel like you should have won one of those.
I think the Wake Forest one you should have won.
Yeah, and Wake Forest was hot at the beginning of the season. So
and I'm looking at this game, and it looks like with 9.5 minutes left in the game, they were down 34 to 14. They scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
To make it look like it was.
Yeah, including one at 2 minutes and 17 seconds.
Yeah.
So they kind of got a garbage touchdown to bring it to within a score.
Right.
But yeah, they got manhandled pretty thoroughly throughout that game.
Yeah.
So Clemson has their number, as I would expect.
Right. And yeah, I would say so too. I haven't figured out who they beat Miami, I guess. Last year.
Well, they're going to get credit for beating Florida. They're going to get credit for beating Miami. They beat 2 SEC teams. They beat LSU and Florida. I don't know where Florida started last year's season, but I'm sure they started last year's season ranked. And I know LSU did.
Right.
Oh, and then they beat Oklahoma. So they got some wins over what I would call notable teams, but they weren't teams that ended up or were ranked.
Florida finished last year 6-7, 3-5 in the conference.
What did they start the season ranked as? That's my question, because they played Utah to start the season, and that was billed as a big deal game.
Right. So their preseason. Let me see if I can find it. So they were not ranked in the preseason poll.
Ooh.
And then they beat Utah and became number 12 in the AP poll.
Oh, that's right. They had that massive jump.
Yeah. It's like, oh man, this team's really good, and then proceeded to lose the next game and dropped to 18. And then in 2 games later, they were out of the poll and never came back on.
Where does LSU fall in all that?
So LSU started the season unranked. They were
really.
Yep. They had votes. They got votes, but they weren't ranked. They were 25th in week 5, the week 5 poll. Then lost, dropped back out. They were 18th in week 8, and then became 15, 7, 6. They got up to 6 in week 12, then lost again. They were 11th and lost again. They were 16th. So, yeah, LSU was, that's conference games. So SEC is going to tell you, well, they're tough conference games. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Just tougher here.
It is. It just means more. Whatever. So anyway, yeah. So there was that. Texas A&M was ranked 6th to start the season. It took them 5 weeks to become unranked and never show their face again. But that's a Texas A&M trait. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we both agree Clemson probably wins the ACC.
I think it's Clemson. And if you had to pick one of those teams, the surprise winner, you think North Carolina?
I think North Carolina to kind of is your dark horse.
Okay, I could go with that. So this is the ACC football preseason poll from the media people. So they have Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina 3rd, North Carolina State. They don't have Pitt till 6th, tied with Duke. And it'll be interesting. But yeah, Miami, Duke, Pitt, NC State. Okay, if you threw those out in any random order, I could probably get behind that. Because I don't know which one was good. Miami's one of those teams again that you watch them every year. There's either they start out with nothing and then they come up with a win and then there's hype and then they bomb later, or they start out being highly ranked and they win a couple games and then they bomb. So so it's typical Miami. So yeah. Anyway, and then there's the other teams. We didn't even talk about the rest of the conference because once you get to Syracuse at 10, it's just none of those teams probably making a bowl game anyway. So. Anyway, ACC, Clemson. We're going with Clemson.
Clemson.
Question is this: does Clemson make it to the college football playoff?
No.
Okay.
I say no on that.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
They're going to be in one of those New Year's 6 games, but they're not going to make the college football playoff. I don't think so either.
Because I think Clemson drops 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But still wins the conference. So.
Right. Yeah, 2 losses. I mean, it would be pretty easy. I don't know. We're gonna have to see a lot more from Clemson than we saw last year. Clemson was good last year. They just weren't good enough. They weren't great. Right. So, but they have to get back to where they used to be. Anyway, all right. So let's move to the next one. You ready?
Yep.
The Big Ten. Because it's alphabetical.
Yes. It's how I have it written on my thing too.
Good. So the Big Ten Conference. Last year's champion was Michigan. Last year's runner-up in the championship game was Purdue.
Oh yeah,
because
all of the good teams
are in the other division. So this is a division that's loaded with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State are all in one division, and on the other side is everyone else. Um, Wisconsin, Purdue, Illinois, Iowa, who can be good sometimes, Minnesota, who had a couple of good years. Um, but yeah, it's
You would
just
think you wouldn't want that. Like you would think if you just beat up on each other inside of one part of your division, then you risk opportunities to get more teams credit to get in. So
well,
you'd think you'd want your best team spread out over the two.
and as we saw last year, Ohio State made it in despite the loss to Michigan, right?
Right.
Ohio State and Michigan were both in. But as you also saw, neither one of them played for a national championship. So, yeah. There was that. I, I've always been saying since they formed these divisions, I've been saying that. Why are you so loaded in one division? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
But
Seems like it only hurt your chances.
so the problem is you want Michigan and Ohio State to play each other, right?
Right.
You'd have to make that a cross division thing where they always play each other, or you keep them in the same division, which might have been a prerequisite from these teams. You know what I mean? To ensure that we're going to play each other. Well, now you got to make sure Michigan and Penn State play, or Michigan and Michigan State play each other, right?
Right.
Because they're rivals and they're right there together. So there's three of them have got to be in the division. Penn State, since it's an East and a West, Penn State is like your second furthest East team or third. Maryland, Rutgers, those guys are way east. There's really no
Yeah.
way to separate them since you're doing it East West. It is what it is. So I don't know. I kind of like the turmoil in that you really can't tell. One of those teams is going to win the division and may not be the best team in the conference.
Right, because of the way it's set up.
Right, because they won the one game they needed to win the division.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see that division. Ohio State's got quarterback questions still. They've got two great wide receivers still. It's going to be Ohio State's going to be good. Michigan, everyone is saying, is the team because they're loaded still. They've got Blake Corum and they've got what's his name at quarterback. I had this on the top of my head a minute ago. JJ McCarthy, right?
Yeah.
So they've got some players. Their center, Drake Nugent, and Zach Zinter, their linemen, they're supposed to be super awesome too. So they've got like four guys on the first team, all conference preseason team. And they're returning most of their offense because the starting quarterback and Blake Corum ran for 1,400 yards last year. So they should be good. The question is, can Ohio State find the guy at quarterback to become, the team again? So they still have Travion Henderson.
Yeah.
So,
They got some talent.
they got some talent. So other than Ohio State and Michigan, here's my question: when you look at this conference, does anybody who isn't Ohio State or Michigan isn't playing in that game? Can any of those other teams win this division? Win the conference?
Win the conference, maybe. Wisconsin is probably them and Purdue are probably the best teams in the other division, right?
Yeah.
So if at any point they win their division and then can manage to create magic for a game, they can
Right.
win the conference. So because all you need is one game because we don't play enough of them to really know who's the best. So all you
Yeah.
need to do is get up for one good game, and if you do that, then you'll be fine. So yeah, I can absolutely see a world where either Purdue or Wisconsin wins that. But it's still rare. And other than those two, I don't think anybody's got a shot. Michigan State's way down. Iowa's got a great defense every year, but can not manage to find an end zone to save their life. Minnesota's trending backwards lately.
Yeah.
There's just no one else that really poses a threat to win it, outside of like the big three: Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I don't.
So much so that I have the winner written as Ohio State or Michigan. Either or, doesn't matter. Whoever wins that game is going to win the division and whoever wins the conference, and I think that's it.
And I think the only suspense will be, does Penn State beat one of those two, Ohio State or Michigan, and throw a little bit of a wrench into it? You know what I mean? Because Michigan's got to play at Penn State this year, which will be
Right.
It's not easy to play in Happy Valley. So I don't know. I like I like Michigan. Um, despite the Harbaugh 3 game suspension that he's going to serve, I guess. Self-imposed 3 games. That has nothing to do with the actual investigation. I mean, it does, but they're trying to get out ahead of it and not get any more punishment. But I think that the NCAA has already said there's going to be more punishment.
Yeah.
Don't know when that's coming, but the 3 game suspension means you're going to sit out against 3 nobodies for Michigan.
Right. That's my thing with those is like it. I get what you're trying to sell me that it's goodwill, but it's not. It's exactly not goodwill. You're specifically sitting it like, oh well, we'll set out the first 3. It's the first 3. Of course, it's not that big a deal. They're nobodies. You're not sitting out for anything important. Your team could beat this team on 3rd string autopilot. All right, you don't need to be there for it.
If you want to impress me and act like you're actually, contrite, there's some, apology for what you've done or what has happened. Sit out the last 3.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna sit out the Ohio State game.
Just sit out either Ohio State or Penn State. Either one.
Just 1 game.
Your choice. 1 game suspension, but it's one of those 2 you pick. I'll let you get through the season to the first one before you decide.
It's just cheeseburgers, man. That's all it is. I don't know.
Just cheeseburgers and lies.
Cheeseburgers and lies.
I think it's gonna be my new gamer tag. Cheeseburgers and lies.
I don't know. It's so sad, and it's the NCAA is not getting cooperation from Jim Harbaugh, so
wasn't. They might be now.
Yeah, but
they weren't getting what they wanted from him.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Don't piss off the NCAA. The NCAA still has to prove that they're relevant.
That's true
because everyone's just accusing them of like not existing anymore, and they still do a ton of stuff. But they last year, it didn't seem like they punished anybody.
No,
you trying to tell me there was no cheating anywhere in college football last year?
Right? Yeah. No, they're
okay.
Clearly. Here's a little also for you. The media in the Big Ten has voted on the second team offense. The quarterback is Taulia Tagovailoa. So he was really good at times last year.
Yes, he was.
Is he the second best quarterback in the Big Ten? I don't know, but maybe that's saying more about the Big Ten than it is anything else. They voted the third team offense. They voted Kyle McCord from Ohio State, who I don't think I've ever seen play a snap. So that's interesting to me that he's the third best quarterback in the league and he hasn't played a snap. I don't know. It should be interesting. So
I hope Tua's brother gets drafted to the Dolphins also.
That would be interesting.
I think it would be very, very peculiar.
That would be cool.
But yeah, this conference is probably of them all is my least surprising conference in terms of who could win.
So here's what the media said. So this is the Big Ten media. They say exactly what you just said, which is Michigan, Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably true. Iowa is always right there, and they've got them at second in the West, and that's great. If Iowa could score some touchdowns and find a way, I think you need a new coach. This is just me talking, but I think you have to find somebody who can ramp up the offense and is willing to change the world because your offense has been so stagnant for so many years. You've been winning games 10-7.
But you're recruiting these absolute monster linemen and monster defenses.
That's great.
So I think I know. Hold on. So I think the adjustment isn't a new head coach; it's a new offensive coordinator, and then a self-aware move by the head coach to go, okay, I'm going to let him run the offensive show.
All right, I'd go with that.
Because you don't want to compromise this great recruiting pipeline that the head coach has to all these fantastic defensive players and linemen and things like that. So you can keep that. Overhaul your offense at the same time. I think that'd be a good deal.
I mean,
maybe
if your recruiting tagline is, come to Iowa, you can be fifth best in this conference, at least until next year. Because I don't know about you, if you add USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington into this thing, I don't know where you see them fitting in. But even if you thought they were going to be behind Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, and maybe Wisconsin, they'd still be ahead of the rest of those teams. All of them. I mean, in my opinion. You put USC up against Iowa, don't tell me you don't think USC is going to win. USC is going to win that game.
I do.
Yeah, easy. And it probably beat
I
Wisconsin.
think Washington beats Iowa. I think Oregon beats Iowa. I think USC beats Iowa. I think UCLA beats Iowa. So yeah, you
Yeah,
immediately drop way down.
yeah,
So it's the time to do something. It's not even now. It was
was.
last year.
Yeah, it was.
It was the moment that USC announced they were coming there. It was like, okay, we got to do something because they're going to get tacked onto to this division.
Yeah,
They're not going to get put on the other side. They're going to get put on this side with you. So Iowa, it's time to step up.
it is.
But just as a whole, everybody in Iowa, let's do better.
Everybody, everybody.
Iowa as a whole, do better.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the Big 12, which is exciting. Which is no longer 12, or is it 12 again? I can't remember.
I think it is 12 again,
I think it used to be 10, right?
and it will be 14 with the addition of Arizona State.
So,
Oh no, it'll be 15 with Arizona State, and Colorado.
right. They're adding 3. It was 10 last year, and then they're adding Central Florida this year,
Is that right?
and BYU. Yes, that's right.
Sounds right.
Central Florida and BYU are also in there. So they're going to have 12, and then yes, they're going to add 3 more, and probably a 4th somewhere. Somebody gets sucked into that, but yeah.
Yep.
Last year's champion was Kansas State, who beat TCU in the championship game, and then TCU still goes on to the national, the college football playoff. I thought losing that late in the season a game was a bad thing, but apparently not for TCU.
Apparently not for Ohio State. Both Ohio State and TCU lost late in their season.
Yeah, they did. Last game of the season,
and they
I
both
think.
made the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, and they both made the playoffs. Which is, I mean,
that being said, they were both fortunate enough that like Alabama lost to Georgia, and
right.
Tennessee didn't play in that final weekend. So those are the 2 teams that were right behind those guys. And it's like, well, what are you supposed to do? They've got 2 losses already. They're behind you. Both of you guys only have 1 loss. This was a terrible. This year emphasized why 4 is just not enough.
Yeah, and this also is what I say about this conference every year. When you had 10 teams, and they said, "Oh, well, we're going to play everybody in the conference, so it's going to matter." Except it doesn't matter because TCU beat Kansas State earlier in the season,
right?
And then they got to play them again for the conference championship. So even though you beat that team, you're not going to be conference champion. Sorry. And that to me doesn't make any sense. That should never happen. Because
everyone agrees.
You should play a third one.
Yeah, everyone agrees.
It
was stupid that they did it, and that's why they've only done it for 2 years, and now it's going to be 12, and it's going to make more sense.
Well, I guess, but like the Pac-12 is in the same situation now. There's no divisions. You could lose to somebody during the regular season, and you'll still get a chance at them in the championship game, which doesn't make any sense.
But I mean, you still want to put the 2 best teams. Like, I mean, you don't need a conference championship at that point, not really, if you're actually playing everybody. But if you don't play everybody, and then you have a conference championship game, you want to put the 2 best teams in, because there were so many years where the 2 best teams in the Pac-12 were Oregon and Stanford.
Yes.
And every year it was either Oregon or Stanford, and they made it to the title game, and they'd smoke the other team, and that was it. Like, it didn't matter. So, eliminating the divisions now actually allows you to put the 2 best teams in there, even if it's a rematch.
That's true.
That kind of sucks, but at least you're getting the best football game.
Well, that's true. Yeah. So Kansas, by the way, is returning 91% of their offense, 91% of their production, and 80% of their defensive production. They are the highest of any college football team in the country in returning production. Just going to throw that out there. So if you're looking for a dark horse, maybe Kansas is the team, but probably not. But hey, you never know. Oklahoma is one of those. What's that?
It's not Les Miles, right? Or he got fired.
He got fired. Yeah.
That's right. He got fired.
Yeah. I mean, because Les Miles apparently. Never mind. We're not even going to go there. But yeah. He needs something. Yeah. So Texas is like the favorite.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we keep throwing praise on Texas. Texas has got to play Alabama right off the bat. At Alabama. So that's going to be an interesting game. I think Alabama beat them last year, although they could get some help.
Yeah.
But we'll see when you go to Alabama to play. It's a different thing. And they're going to be without Bijan Robinson. Their best player is not there. So I don't know. You think Texas beats Alabama week 1? That's part of my games, right? It's week 1 or is it week 2? Hang on.
Week 2.
I don't have it. It's week 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
week 2.
yeah, that one takes place on the 9th. Do you think that
Yeah.
Texas can go to Alabama and win?
I think anything can happen. Will it likely happen? No,
Okay.
because they couldn't beat Alabama at home, and yeah, it took a little. There were some questionable calls in that game,
There were.
late in that game, but at the end of the day, Texas was an 8-5 team last year,
Right.
about consistent with what they've been for however long, like for a while now.
Right.
So Texas they're okay, and they'll go there, and it's a big headlining game, and it's a preview of things to come for the SEC, but I don't think they have a chance to do that.
Yeah. All right. I'm with you. I don't think they're going to beat Alabama, and then right off the bat, there's going to be, they're going to be questioning themselves. It's hard to lose, early in the season like that in a gigantic game. And if it's close, then yeah, maybe you can come away with some sort of moral victory. But if you get blown out, you show you don't belong. It's going to be tough. I don't know. But that being said, this division or this conference, if you had to put money on it right now, who would you pick?
I'm going to put my money on Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have this feeling that, Brent Venables has had, not the best years.
Right.
But that guy that team gets a lot of talent. It's a big, very popular football school. I think Texas isn't necessarily going to step forward. I think TCU is going to step backwards.
Right.
Texas Tech is kind of a question mark. They were another 8-5 team last year.
Yeah.
They've got some good returning talent. I just don't know, but they also play Oregon second game of the season, so you'll learn a little bit about them then. But I think Oklahoma is primed to improve, and if they improve enough, they will be. I think they're going to be conference champions. So,
okay.
Oklahoma's who I got up there.
Okay. I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna drink some Kool-Aid, and I'm gonna go with Texas.
It's not a bad choice because there's no one else really that stands out too much.
So this is the media poll for the Big 12, and there's your it's 14 teams I guess playing this year. They forgot about Cincinnati and Houston.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Who are kind of also rans.
So they're gonna have 17 here soon.
Yeah. So this year you're only gonna play what at most 9 of those teams.
So there's a good chance that in their conference championship game you could play somebody you didn't play.
There's a good chance, yeah.
Yeah. Probably not, but because those rivalries exist.
Right.
So Oklahoma, Texas, and
they're
Texas,
gonna
Texas
play.
Tech. So
yeah.
if those are your top 3 teams in the conference, then you're going to play them again.
Yeah. So TCU, who was the best team in the conference last year, slated in there at number 5 by the media. That's quite a ways down. I mean, and Oklahoma State's clearly not as good as they have been. Iowa State was one of those teams that could jump up and bite you. They've got them way down, those teams. So those teams that I would look at as a dark horse, and normally it would have been Oklahoma State or Iowa State or Baylor. I don't think they're going to be that good. I think if you were looking for a dark horse, Texas Tech might be your team.
Texas Tech would be a good one, yeah.
If they can beat Oregon, you know,
can beat Oregon.
Who knows what happens?
Which we know Oregon doesn't travel the best.
Right, playing at home. Yeah.
Early season important games traveling, not great.
Not great. Yeah. Okay, but I'm going to take Texas just because.
That's fair.
I mean,
I can get behind it.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't like Texas, but I'm going to take Texas. So I'm going to put down Parker's pick, which is Oklahoma. Got to write them down here. Perfect. All right. So does Texas? Okay, for your end, does Oklahoma make the college football playoff if they win the Big 12?
No.
Okay. No college football playoff for Oklahoma.
Because I don't think any team from the Big 12 is going to come out with less than 2 losses. So
I'm gonna since I picked Texas, I have to qualify the next statement. If they beat Alabama on the road and win the conference, 1 loss or less.
1 loss or less.
They'll be in the college football playoff.
And not late.
Yeah,
and
not the conference
late.
championship game. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if they have to beat Alabama on the road, because I think they're going to lose one of the conference games, and I don't know who it's to. So I feel like if you lose Alabama and you lost the conference game, that's 2, and that's going to look bad, especially if you get compared to Alabama later in the year.
Right.
You don't want to do that. So anyway, I feel like if they beat Alabama in week 2 and they run the table in the Big 12, right, they go unbeaten. Even if they lost the conference championship game, I still think they would get in. That would be enough for the voters. You know what I mean? to say, oh, you got to win over Alabama. So that's what I think. Texas has to finish with one loss to get in, and they have to beat Alabama. If their one loss is to Alabama, that's a whole nother question. I don't know.
Everything's on.
That's a tough one. All right, let's move to the SEC.
SEC.
The SEC. Let's talk about the SEC because that's what we love to do. Last year's champion, obviously Georgia. National champion, also. They're also the predicted preseason number one. Hard to bet against the team, although they're losing a starting quarterback, right? They're losing a number of NFL draftees. Will they be able to just reload? Do you think Georgia can reload and be as dominant as they were last year?
No.
Okay. Do you think
you don't have a 12th year damn senior quarterback?
Yeah, well, that's true.
Like
that's true.
That guy had more experience at playing quarterback than most people have at just working, like past 18 years old. Like he was primed to do that.
Right.
But they lost so many people. They lost so much of their offense and defense. So, and they all went to Philly. So, because Philly drafts nothing but Georgia players.
Right.
But so yeah, I don't see Georgia being as dominant as they were. Still good, not as dominant.
Okay. So that being said, this is another division, another thing. Well, Georgia notwithstanding, traditionally all the power's been in the West, and that's right. LSU and Alabama, and heck, when Mississippi and Mississippi State were playing well, and Texas A&M is over there, and they're always an also-ran now because while I think they would be a tremendous team in any other conference, they're not any good. I mean, they're not going to do better than being sixth place in the SEC. And Oklahoma and Texas are coming so next year, so that might make it even worse for them. I don't know. Texas A&M, one of those teams. Since Jimbo Fisher's been there, I think he's on the hot seat. I think he needs to win. They need to win some games. They need to
very much agree.
Show that they can compete in the SEC because I don't think another year of 8-5 is going to cut it.
I don't think anybody's going to be accepted.
No. I mean, I think you need a 10-win season, and you need to have a signature win in there. Otherwise, I'd probably be looking for another head coach. That's just me talking.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay.
I think that is.
Okay. I think Georgia's going to take a little step back. Are they still the best team in the SEC East?
Probably, yeah. Tennessee could threaten them, but I don't think they're really going to displace them.
Tennessee could be in there in that discussion with their returning offensive players that they have. Florida's in that division, but it's going to be one of those three, right? Because the rest of that division is what? Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Missouri. Don't count out Missouri. I'm not going to say that they're going to be terrible, and then Kentucky, right? So, Kentucky had a good year last year for a while, but they're now going to be without a quarterback, right? Without Will Levis, just a different team.
Will Levis.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I feel like if I'm going to pick Georgia in that division, and then I'm going to pick Tennessee as second, and if Tennessee manages to beat Georgia during the regular season and win the division, hey, even better. I think that'd be great. I'd be rooting for Tennessee. Yeah.
That's exactly how I have it written down.
The other side, what do you think in the SEC West? Who wins that division?
It's hard to say. You want to pick Alabama or LSU.
Yep.
You feel like those are going to be the guys. I think A&M's overrated, so I don't think they're a threat. I think Auburn is currently dealing with some things.
Issues,
so yes. So I don't think they're going to be a threat. I think it's going to be Alabama or LSU, and I don't trust Jaden Daniels. I watched him in the Pac-12 for a while, and I don't trust him. So I'm going to go with Alabama, even without knowing who their quarterback is. So I think your conference title game is going to be Alabama, Georgia again.
Okay, I think it's going to be LSU, Georgia.
Think so?
Yep. And
with Georgia winning?
Yes.
Okay.
Easily. Yeah. If you had to pick one team from the whole conference, the surprise team of the year, that no one's really looking at, who would it be?
I wouldn't say no one's looking at them, but I would say Tennessee is the team with the most talent that could make the right amount of noise.
Okay.
So if they do the right things at the right times, they will be fine. They will go up in the rankings and things like that. Because I think right now they have a 12th in the rankings, and I think that's low for how well they did last year. So
Yeah.
I think Tennessee's the team that could surprise everyone. I don't think that there's like a Vanderbilt who's going to step up, or a Missouri, or a Kentucky who's all of a sudden going to be, a true contender. Because even last year, like Kentucky was good, but you were just waiting for them to lose until they got to that little stretch, and then they did.
That's true.
But Tennessee last year, you were kind of thinking the same thing. Oh, they got to get through that hard stretch, and then they got to the hard stretch, and they won a couple of them, and you were like, oh, crap. When did this happen? So if Tennessee continues that train, and Joe Milton is like Hendon Hooker with more muscle, and it seems like a better IQ. And Hendon Hooker's great.
Yeah. If I had to pick one, I'm going to pick one surprise team. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
It's Arkansas. And Arkansas is returning KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders. And if their defense can come up with any kind of playmaking ability, they could beat some teams. I'm not saying they're going to be like they're going to win the division or anything, but I think they could surprise the crap out of some of these teams.
You say, what was this Rocket? What?
Rocket Sanders. Hey, it's a great name.
Did you see they published the preseason list of all American college football names?
Yeah.
Number 1 was General Booty. For the Oklahoma Sooners. I pulled it up here. Rowdy Beers, tight end from the FIU Panthers.
That's a good one.
Parker Titsworth from the Ohio Bobcats. Shitta Silla.
That's not going to be able. You can't even say it. You can't even say it.
Sillah. Shitta Silla.
Yeah.
Well, Fish McWilliams.
Fish.
Tackle.
Fish is a good name.
What a great name, Fish. It seems like it shouldn't be.
No, I like it.
But, Booby Curry. Oh, some of these are so good. I'm reading. This is Pig Cage, linebacker.
Yeah.
UTSA. Storm Duck, Louisville. Storm Duck is his name? That's not real.
Well, I thought some of these were made up too, because last year Georgia had a linebacker named Bumper Pool. And I was like, Bumper Pool?
Do you think these guys are like, no? Like, do you think they're aware that, like, okay, these are kind of funky?
Where are your parents?
That's Dude Person. There's a guy named Dude Person.
I don't know, man. I don't know about the names. I don't even know. I mean, you remember a few years ago when all the boys? Never mind. I don't know. I don't know where you get those names from. I don't know who comes up with them. But
all right.
Is it
Panda Askew?
Is it better? Is it better to have one of those unique names that's common? That's a common, like Fish. That no one has a first name of Fish, right?
Yeah.
But it's a common word. It's a common thing. Is it better for that, or is it better to be called Quinshawn? That's my question.
I think it's better to have an easily pronounceable name.
Yeah.
But it's unique enough in its origins.
It's a marketable name. Fish.
It's a marketable name. Storm Duck is a great one, right? That's a great name. It's weird. It's kind of strange, but I know the word storm and I know the word duck, and I'm never going to confuse them.
And if you if Fish McWilliams has some kind of trouble landing a NIL deal, right? For some sort of fish sandwich or fish company or whatever. Come on, man. What
do you think? What do you think Titsworth's deal is then?
The
local gentleman's club?
Sports bra company?
The sports bra company.
I don't know what he's gonna. I don't know.
But yeah, I think it's not a bad thing to have. It's like Fish McWilliams is a good one because McWilliams is a name I've heard before. So it's not entirely crazy. The whole thing isn't crazy. Just unusual.
When I hear the last names, I always think of someone out looking for their golf ball. Okay. And when you go out looking for your golf ball, you look at it and you say the name of it, right? When you go find it to make sure that it's yours. You always do that. Yep. It's a Titleist. So when I think of somebody's last name, I always think of some golfer out looking in for his ball. Yep. It's a Titsworth.
It's a Titsworth.
And I don't know that one's going to be as marketable, but that's all right.
Yeah,
it's still funny.
This was a good side tangent, but I love fun player names. Yeah. I think your name has to be weird, but not crazy. So I think, Parker Titsworth is weird,
You're-
but it's actually not that weird. Now I'm thinking about it because it's my next word.
We went and watched Oregon play, and I want to say it was South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
The Jackrabbits, is that right? Or
Oh yeah, Jackrabbits right again.
Is it Jackrabbits or South Dakota or South Dakota State? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
That's South Dakota State.
That's South Dakota State. What's South Dakota? Anyway, I don't remember what they are. They were red. Every team we ever watched them play is red. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, they had a guy on their team named Jet Moreland. And your mother fell in love with that name. Like, that was like the best football name ever, Jet Moreland. And I'm like, it's a pretty good one. It's pretty strong.
Any name that implies speed, is kind of a fun one.
Right.
So why don't you just name
Rocket
Speed?
Rocket Sanders. Speed would be a good one.
Speed Duck.
I don't know if that fits. You can do those two. Mutually exclusive a little bit. All right. So here's what the media says about the SEC football. So clearly, it's exactly what we were talking about.
Yes.
I think Florida Gators down there, way down there at 5th in the East, might be a little low.
It might be. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
And again, I think Arkansas might surprise Ole Miss and Texas A&M and make a run up the chart a little bit. So, but not saying that. Ole Miss, you never know how Ole Miss is going to do. Lane Kiffin is going to talk a big game. They're going to win some games, and then they're going to lose dramatic fashion against somebody good because that's what they do.
Then they will disappear for the rest of the year.
Then they will disappear for the rest of the year. Remember that time when Mississippi State was the number 1 team in the country?
With Dak Prescott?
And now they're last in their division. Maybe just better than Vanderbilt.
Maybe just better than Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And Vanderbilt is even not that bad.
Yeah.
By the way, that reminds me, I didn't know Tennessee was playing their first game of the season in Nashville this year.
Yeah, that's a recruiting
They're playing
move.
it at Titan Stadium or at Nissan Stadium. So I think that's kind of cool.
That's a big recruiting move right there.
Yeah, probably. That's
Power
why they
grab.
did it over at what was it, the Speedway? Bristol.
Right. Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about our favorite conference. Let's talk about the Pac-12. So the Pac-12 is loaded with quarterbacks. Loaded. As much as those other conferences have a quarterback star, or they're trying to replace those guys, at Ohio State or at wherever, at Alabama, they're trying to fill in. The Pac-12 has Caleb Williams at USC. It has Michael Penix at Washington. It has Bo Nix at Oregon. It has Cameron Rising at Utah. It has Jaden DeLora at Arizona State. It has what's the Ward at Washington State. I can't think of his first name. Dang it!
I know you're talking about. Yeah.
Cameron Ward.
Cameron Ward.
There are quarterbacks galore in the Pac-12 with experience, and at least 3, if not 4 of them are probably going to be right around first-round draft picks.
Yeah, the Waits Are Early by Yard Barker, who does like a bunch of like NFL stuff. They have 3 Pac-12 quarterbacks going in the top 16.
Yeah, it would not surprise me at all. I would not.
And it's the 3 that you think: Williams, Penix, Nix.
Yeah, and I would not surprise me if the other guys that I just mentioned, Rising and freaking Ward, are both taken in the NFL draft. It's just a matter of when.
I'm discrediting this thing right now because they have the Broncos taking Shadur Sanders at 19.
Well, he's staying at home cooking.
He's not even from here.
But I mean, he is now.
I guess, yeah, sure.
I don't know.
You're not wrong. But that would make 4 Pac-12 quarterbacks in the top 20.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I don't know. So last year's champion was Utah, right? Utah won the conference championship game by really thumping USC 47-24. They also beat them.
Absolutely crushed them.
They also beat them in probably the best game of the year at during the regular season. That gigantic. What was the overtime game? I can't even think about it now. But I was watching it in Hawaii when when Utah beat USC. It was 43-42.
Yeah.
It was in Utah, but it was amazing. I mean, that game was back and forth, and it was a last minute touchdown, and it was amazing.
I remember that game, and Cam got that 2-point conversion to win it. And then when the next game came around, everyone was like, "Oh, the revenge game, getting back for that loss that they gave them earlier in the season." And then they got thumped.
They got thumped pretty hard.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, what's his name was hurt or injured or kind of injured. I don't know, but to get worked that hard in a conference title game, I know this because Oregon got worked that hard the year before in the conference title game. It
Right.
sucks, and it shouldn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty bad. You would like to think that conference championship games are going to be close because the two teams are even, but as we've seen, the Big Ten games are never any good,
Yeah,
or not normally. There's a lot of that going around. But yeah, USC Utah was a very good football team that lost a couple of games kind of inexplicably.
yeah,
Um, the, all three of their regular season losses, the non bowl game, were on the road. They lost at Florida, at UCLA, and at Oregon. And lost by 3 at Florida. They lost by 3 at Oregon. Yeah, they lost by 10 at UCLA, but what's his name? Charbonnet ran for like 1,000 yards.
he had a big day.
Yeah. So that Utah's a really good football team, and I would not put money against Utah winning the division. Everybody's going, "Oh yeah, it's USC, it's Caleb Williams," but I mean, I
I think
don't.
that's a mistake.
I think that's a mistake. Yeah, I don't think they're. I think they're good. Don't get me wrong. Top 3 in the conference, sure. Are they top 1? Are they going to be the? No, I can't even tell you they're going to be number 2 in the
Yeah.
conference. And then when
And don't get me wrong, Caleb Williams was third last year in college football in passing yards.
Yeah.
But I think that guy is wildly overrated.
I do too, and it would be interesting to see. So, I was looking at stats in general. So, like passing efficiency from last year.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams is 5th in passing efficiency, but that's a passer. It's like a rating, it's a 168 or whatever it is. And for example, C.J. Stroud was number 1 at 177, but Hendon Hooker is in there above him. The Coastal Carolina quarterback is in there, Grayson McCall. Anyway, Bo Nix was 7th in that same thing. So the efficiency thing is just some big old rating system, I don't know exactly how it all works. There's a long drawn out formula that tells you this, that, and the other thing. Passing touchdowns, Caleb Williams led the country in passing touchdowns, 42. However, he played one more game than C.J. Stroud, who had 41. So he wouldn't have led the country if C.J. Stroud had played in a conference championship game, more than likely. So those are the kind of stats where you look at him and you go, okay, it was really good, but yardage, Caleb Williams was 3rd. And then he wins the Heisman, which I guess, but I couldn't give you another player that was better, I guess, that definitively better.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why he won the Heisman. But I mean, he did.
It was kind of a wash year in finding somebody who is definitively a standout.
Yeah, and normally it's one of those guys from a winning program that not saying they weren't winning,
Yeah.
but they're from a team that is going. I mean, USC lost the conference championship game. They lost to Utah. They weren't going to a college football playoff. And also ran. Yeah. So it was kind of weird. I don't know, but he's way up there in all the stats.
I'm seeing this now. What you were talking about. So it's the NCAA formula for passing efficiency.
Yeah.
Is 8.4 yards, 8.4 times the yardage, plus 330 times the touchdowns, minus 200 times the interceptions, plus 100 times completions, divided by attempts.
Yeah, that's what I say.
I'm looking at this and I'm like, I understand. And then my first thing goes, why 8.4?
You right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm sure there's a reason for it, but I read the first line. Why 8.4?
So when we talk about passer rating and passer efficiency and those things, I absolutely say it's a bunch of garbage because somebody came up with these numbers and they weighted certain things because that's why this one's times 300, but this one's times 100, right? And I'm like, I don't understand where this comes from. Is an interception less of a big deal than a touchdown?
Right.
They should be even, right? Maybe interception is worse, and it should cost you a lot more than throwing a touchdown pass.
Yeah, touchdowns is 330 times touchdowns, and interceptions is 200 times interceptions.
That doesn't make any sense.
In theory, the touchdowns are rated more. It says here 8.4 was chosen so that the average passer would have a rating for yards per attempt and completion percentage of exactly 100. 330 and 200 were chosen to cancel each other out for the average passer. 3.3 times and 2 times. What?
Yeah.
Some freaking nerd in
right.
1979 said,
awesome.
I've got an idea.
This is great. This is going to decide it once and for all.
And he was right the first year. and was like, "See," and it's stuck around ever since.
Passing efficiency is one of those things where I just go, "What are
It's
we
an
talking
interesting
about?" I don't
and
even know.
apparently high school football has a different computational
Yeah,
volume
oh, sure.
that weighs interceptions less because they happen more often in high school. So that's interesting.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
But yeah, so back to the pack.
So let's go back to the Pac-12.
Okay.
No divisions, right? So we're just playing. The top two teams are going to play in the conference championship game. Um, you got all these great quarterbacks. There's some teams we haven't talked about that have opportunities. Oregon State, who took a gigantic leap forward last year, but still, it's a rough schedule. Um,
Right.
I don't know if they'll be as good as last year. I just don't. I mean, you're adding a quarterback that they think is going to be the guy and is going to help them get another step forward, but I don't know. I don't know that he's the guy at Oregon State. He wasn't the guy at Clemson with a number one team around him.
Right.
So how's he going to be the guy at Oregon State?
Well, even looking at last year, I mean, they had some games that they snuck out, right? So they snuck out Fresno State at Fresno State, right? Because that was a final touchdown in like the last minute of that game because they were struggling. They snuck out Stanford at Stanford.
Right.
And then, but so between those two games though, which were within the first half of the season or first 60% of the season, they would have been 2-4 or 3-4 to start the season, and the whole entire dynamic would change. Now they got those games, and yeah, they went on a tear down the stretch. They almost beat Washington. It was 24-21, so it was a little closer than it should have been. They beat Oregon again. They snuck out. I would say they snuck out a win against Oregon, but Oregon really just let them take it. Oregon had that win. They just let them take it. So
yeah,
they didn't. All the good teams they played, so USC, Oregon, Washington, Utah, they didn't exactly work any of them.
No.
So they kind of struggled. They were close with Washington. They beat Oregon. They got smoked by Utah, and they were close with USC. Like, you can say the one thing, which is, okay, well, that shows that they're good enough to hang. Or it shows that the other team kind of let you down or let themselves down and let you into this, because that's what Oregon did. I can tell you right now, Oregon let Oregon State into that game.
Yeah. Well,
but
Oregon's a whole nother thing in that if Bo Nix stays healthy, that's a
probably beat
different
Washington
football team. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean that's another example. So you were playing Oregon State. Oregon State was last game of the season, and Bo Nix was not mobile.
Nope.
He was not going anywhere.
But
so
and the funny part was he couldn't the week before either when they played Utah, and they beat Utah.
And they beat Utah, but it was a defensive battle. 2017, it was a low scoring game. Bo Nix still was 327 with 2 touchdowns against Oregon State. Yeah. But Oregon State just ran the ball 268 yards rushing, and then there were some timely. There was a fumble. There was I don't think there was a pick. I don't think Bo Nix threw a pick. Yeah, no picks. There was a fumble at one point by Oregon that gave them a real good opportunity. So I don't know. I look at Oregon State and I think, damn, they're way better than they were 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
I don't think DJU's the guy. I don't know why you're not starting Aiden Childs right now. Because you're looking down the barrel of not having a conference next year.
Yep.
Who are you going to play? Where is his exposure going to come from?
Right.
DJU's only got 1 year left. Like, sorry, dude, it sucks, man. We got to make a business decision right now. We need to start Aiden Childs because we want him to stay past this year.
Right.
So that's just me. But I do think Oregon State's much better, and I think they're going to step back from last year, though. I have them at 9 or 8 wins.
And your media poll, which I'm looking at right now, the Washington is second in the poll. USC, Washington, Utah, Oregon. Washington has less first place votes than Utah, which is not normal. That means that there's a lot of people that have gone, oh yeah, Utah, we're gonna have them number 1, and there's a lot of people that said Utah probably 6th. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
there's some disparity. Yeah. So you're like, that's a really interesting stat to look at, is that how many first place votes you get and where you still are. If you have the second most first place votes in the conference, but you're not second. So there's some wild arrangements there, and I don't know who the media guy was that voted for Oregon, but they got 1 vote.
Yeah. Hey, let's go, bud.
They got 1.
I'm looking at Washington's schedule here, and Washington is good. Michael Penix is good. So this isn't there's no doubt about it. I'm wondering if they're going to be able to keep that same level of success because when I'm looking at them, when I'm looking at their schedule, I'm seeing quite a few games here where it's like, why was it a 7-point game versus Arizona State? Why was it a 10-point game against Arizona? Why was it a 7-point game against Cal? Why was
Right.
it a 3-point game against Oregon State?
Right.
Like, I don't understand how some of those things happen despite him being incredible because he had he had three 400 plus yard passing games, one 500 plus yard, and he never had a game below 200 passing yards.
Right.
So, as a matter of fact, he had one at 229 and then one at 298, and everything's 300 or above. So he's incredible. But I don't want to give Washington their credit, but I think they're wildly underrated in the polls. And I think USC's overrated. So if Washington is who I think they are, and USC is who I think they are, then Washington I think will be better than USC.
Well, the Washington schedule is good for them. I mean, Boise State, Tulsa, Michigan State at Michigan State is a interesting game. They play Oregon at home, which is good, but they do play at USC and at Oregon State. So,
right. And they have a stretch there where it's at USC, Utah, and then at Oregon State.
That's a tough 3-game late in the season.
Assuming Oregon State's still good and still stepped up.
Yeah,
that's gonna be brutal.
And all of that prior to the Apple Cup.
Also, They just lost one of their starting running backs. They have a couple of them. Yeah, they just lost Cam Davis for the whole season. He's a sophomore, but he had a huge part of the offense. So
right,
that kind of sucks.
It kind of sucks.
And kind of sucks for him, but also I don't want Washington to be good, so whatever.
Right. Yeah. So USC has 4 out of 5 games stretch where they play at Notre Dame, Utah, at Cal, Washington, and then at Oregon. So they're going to play 4 ranked teams in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
That's going to be a telling stretch of the season. That'll be the only thing that'll be told this year, and then that's all prior to their rivalry game with UCLA at UCLA.
But I think that's a good thing for him because having everything kind of put on the back end of your year.
Yeah,
I think it allows you time to get rhythm, get confidence.
Could be. I mean, maybe. I don't know. And then if you're looking at Utah, Utah's got to play Florida at home this year. Baylor at Baylor. Both of those games, by the way, are on ESPN. So they've got 2 games that are pretty big games. And then, of course, Weber State, which is terrible. But their ranked teams are kind of broken up, but 3 of them are on the road. They play at Oregon State, at USC, at Washington. So that's going to be a little tougher.
By the way, at the moment, USC or Washington is not favored in any of those ranked matchups. So they're currently projected to lose to Oregon, USC, Utah, and Oregon State.
Good Lord. And
which means it's a 4-loss team right there.
And the media,
if you believe your own rankings.
And the media says they're number 2 in the conference.
Exactly. So either you believe Oregon's going to lose way more than that, or something else, some craziness is going to happen. But yeah, they currently, and don't get me wrong, some of these are, I think like the Utah game, it's like Utah's like a 51.8.
Oh, right.
So that's not
it's
that
50,
big a deal.
but still.
But the Oregon State game, Oregon State's a 56% favorite.
We're gonna know a lot about some of these teams early, and then some of these teams it's gonna be late, like USC. It's gonna be the second half of the season. But Utah, you're gonna find out a lot early. Florida, Baylor, UCLA, and Oregon State are on the first half of the season. That's gonna be tough. I mean, those are not easy games.
The crazy thing about it is that every one of these teams is reasonably speaking, it's kind of the same way for everyone, but every one of these teams is one injury away from wild uncertainty. If Caleb Williams gets hurt, what are we even talking? Bo Nix gets hurt. If Michael Penix gets hurt, what are we even talking about? The only team I feel comfortable saying if DJU gets hurt, they still got a Childs. Yeah,
they got a guy.
Like they know they got a guy.
Yeah, you're right.
But everyone else is a tweaked knee away from Caleb Williams saying, well, it's the 4th game of the season. I tweaked my knee. I'm just going to shut it down for the season and maintain my draft stock.
Right.
Damn. Yeah. That would be such a killer. But also, he's projected to be top 5 pick already. Why? He has nothing to go out and get except for accolades.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I don't know. I think Oregon State has a chance. I mean, if they beat Utah at home, and that's the 5th game of the season, they play San Jose State, UC Davis, San Diego State. San Diego State's no gimme, but it's at home.
San Jose State's no gimme either.
That's true, but I think they'll win those games.
I think they should too. Yes.
And then Washington State on the road is not a gimme either, but they play Utah at home, and then Cal. There's a chance through 6 games they could be 6-0. I mean, there's not a huge. I mean, I would say 5-1 is a solid bet because none of those teams are great. And then after that, it gets a little harder, but still, UCLA, Arizona, Colorado are the next 3. There's a chance they're 7-2 after 9 games.
I had them pegged at 4-2 through the first 6 games.
Okay, that could be.
So, yeah.
But I mean, they could be 7-2 or 6-3. They're going to be in the mix when the last 2 games are it's Washington and Oregon, so that's a huge thing. But I don't consider the Arizona, Colorado, Stanford run, those 3 games later in the season, to be that difficult, because none of those teams are great. And California's thrown in there. UCLA, is pretty good, but they play them at home. This is a good setup for Oregon State if they're going to do it and going to show that they actually can duplicate last year and be good. This is the year. The schedule sets up nicely for them.
I was thinking that same thing. They are currently on my sheet as my go-to dark horse team.
All right.
For the Pac-12.
Okay. I don't.
So then, who do you got winning the Pac? Or who are your 2 teams in the Pac-12 title game?
Okay, 2 teams in the title game. I think it's going to be Utah and Oregon.
Wow, no USC, no Washington. The pollsters will light the world on fire.
I think it's going to be Utah and Oregon. And I think Oregon, the fact that they play at home against USC, that's going to be the game that launches them into that. They're going to win one of the 2, either Washington or Utah, and lose one, and then win the rest of their games. So they're going to be 8-1, headed home to play USC, right? They're going to win that game, and that's what's going to vault them into the championship game. And then they play Oregon State at home. So, yeah.
So you think they get their revenge on Oregon State this year?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Now, this is all provided Bo Nix stays healthy.
Hey, everything is provided somebody stays healthy.
Right. So Bo Nix stays healthy. They got this.
So Oregon wins the Pac?
Oregon, I didn't say that.
Okay, so Utah, Oregon title game, who wins?
That's a tough one, too, because neutral site now, having beaten them, but I said they would win one of those games, Washington and Utah, and lose one of them. And Oregon doesn't have great success against Utah all the time. As opposed, 2 years ago when they lost to Utah twice. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Where's this year's Pac-12 title game? Is it in Vegas?
It's in Vegas, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that matters.
Are Mormons allowed to go to Sin City?
Well, that part of it, yeah.
So in that regard, you might be that part. just to the stadium and then immediately back to Utah, just right across the border, and then you can stay at the hotels on the border.
As long as you don't look to your left, you're good. Just
that's fair.
I don't know.
That's fair.
They probably
it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be it's a rough season.
You got to pick one because you got to write down.
Oh shit, I do.
You have to pick. Yeah, you have to pick because then we have to look back on it maybe at the end of the season.
I'm gonna pick Utah again.
It hurts my heart.
Yep.
But I have a hard time. I have a hard time disagreeing, but not too hard a time because I'm gonna take Oregon. I have
as a champion.
I have Oregon versus USC in a champion in a rematch of their earlier season game.
Okay.
So, but I think Oregon loses to USC earlier in the season. That's their first loss, or their only loss, and then I think they beat USC in the conference title game.
All right.
So, but it's a little bit of homerism, but I saw the trajectory that Oregon was on last year,
right?
And then Bo Nix got hurt.
Right.
There was nobody that was stopping Oregon.
No, not the way he was playing
until Bo Nix got hurt.
And
so if that is even kind of the same,
right?
Oof.
And
they return a lot of receivers, running backs,
Bucky Irving and Troy Franklin.
We were listed as having the 4th best receiving core in the nation.
Yeah, and they got some transfers guys in too that were
they got some transfers
from transfer dudes.
Is Terrence Ferguson still there? Okay, see, I feel like he played for years.
Well, there's a lot of guys like that when I see.
Wait, his name isn't Terrence Ferguson. That's a basketball player.
That is a basketball player. So,
or is his name Terrence Ferguson?
I mean, it might be.
I cannot remember. Yeah, his name is Terrence Ferguson.
It is Terrence. There's more than one. There it is. Yeah, there he is. Football, Oregon.
Oh, that hurts. Yeah, when you type it. Oh, he's from Littleton. Nice. He's from just south of here.
He doesn't look like the other Terrence Ferguson.
Not at all. No, he's a junior.
Yeah, I see that.
Which is great because he's a stud.
6'5", 255. Yeah.
Him and Bo Nix had a connection. So yeah,
Yeah.
so they're returning starting tight end, they're returning starting wide receiver, starting running back, starting quarterback, a couple linemen. They are replacing a couple linemen. They had some
Yeah.
massive transfers and massive recruits, and their secondary looks great.
Yeah.
So
Even after Gonzalez is gone. So
yeah,
Gonzalez.
so even if they lost because I think they lost their offensive coordinator because I think he
Yeah.
left to go become the head coach somewhere. Even with losing him, as long as the offense kind of maintains the same identity from last year and basic kind of structure and scheme, and Bo Nix is healthy, I don't know of teams that can beat him.
You may be right.
So, I mean, it's tough to say, but it's just because I am confident in Oregon um, winning against Washington and then winning against Oregon State to close out the season last year with a healthy Bo Nix. And then they get to a conference style game where they would have played Utah, right?
Yep.
And then we're in the same boat,
It's
debating Cam Rising's greatness.
true. All right. So that brings us to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Who are your 4 teams in the college football playoff?
So because I have Oregon only losing one game during the regular season, winning the conference, I have them in.
Okay.
And it's homery, but it is what it is.
Okay.
I have 2 SEC teams getting in.
Okay.
I have Alabama and UGA.
Yep.
And then either or, you know who I'm going to say, Michigan or Ohio State.
Who is it?
Either or.
You have to pick one. Remember? You told me that.
Yeah, I did say that. I don't think Michigan's it, so let's go with Ohio State.
Okay.
So Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, UGA. And I think that they're, of course, going to do the classic thing. First round is going to be either Oregon versus SEC, and Ohio State versus SEC, so that way we can get an all-SEC final.
I think it's going to be Georgia, Utah, Michigan, and Ohio State.
Man, if Utah makes it to the college football playoff, I will root for them as hard as I root for any team.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I like Cam Rising. I think he's great.
Yeah, I'm hoping they can do it. I don't know if they can or not. I just don't think USC is your team. I think they're overrated. I think they're going to have some issues, and I think they're like we said, one injury away from being a disaster. Because who you got back behind the Heisman Trophy winner?
We didn't talk about Colorado at all.
I don't know if we need to.
I agree.
Until they do something.
I have no reason to believe that Colorado is going to be some all of a sudden world beater that I was unaware of. I just don't see it.
If Colorado comes out and wins at TCU in week 1, we'll have a conversation. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it. I'll give them some praise and some love because their schedule is TCU, Nebraska, Colorado State, and then at Oregon and then USC. So the 3 of the first 5 are ranked teams, 2 of them on the road. If they're even 3-2 at that point, I'll give them some love. But until then, nah. Yeah, they got it.
I agree.
You're bringing in your FCS quarterback. That's your boy. I get it. You think he's going to be a great quarterback at this level, but it's a huge step up. It's totally different. Right. I don't think that's the right move. I don't think I would have done that. But that's what you get when Dad's coach. So.
When Dad's the coach of the team, you're gonna get time.
It happens all the time. It happens at the little league level all the time, right? So the junior or pee wee level. My dad's the coach, so I'm playing. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback. I'm just saying it is a whole nother level than it was at Jackson State. So all right. So we were going to talk about expansion or realignment or whatever you want to call it. We just don't have time.
Don't have time. So here's one question I have for you though.
Yeah, go.
So have you looked over the Heisman odds?
I have not. Let me just pull it up.
So they published all the Heisman odds and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I want to know who's most overrated, who's most underrated in the odds.
So let's make sure we're on the same set of odds here because I feel like there's multiple. I've got multiple things that I'm looking at here. The USA Today has Heisman betting odds. Oh, that's right. Let's do that one. Let's go to that one.
If you Google it and you click on the Vegas Insider link, it lists what the odds are at FanDuel, MGM, all at DraftKings.
Vegas
everything.
Insider. There we go.
Yeah,
I'm on it.
This is what I was going by.
Okay. So, who's the most overrated?
Who's the most overrated? Who has the best odds or good or has good odds that you're like, I'm not sure why.
Um, well, if you believe that Texas is not back,
Hey,
Quinn Ewers,
that's who I wrote.
Cade Klubnik could also be one of those guys.
I
Um,
wrote Quinn Ewers because I think that Texas
Quinn
is not
Ewers. Yeah, I
back.
don't think Texas is back either.
All right. And
So
now
that's
who's the
Quinn
most
Ewers.
underrated? Who do you think needs to be getting more credit?
Um,
And just for remaining passive, let's take Bo Nix out of it.
okay. Um, Joe Milton.
Joe Milton, Tennessee.
Joe Milton.
I wrote him
Depending
down.
upon how much Michigan throws the football, J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, I could see that too. Yeah, I
Uh,
wrote down Joe Milton and Drake May.
okay, Drake May is also pretty far down considering
Yeah.
how good he is. I mean, if you're telling me he's not that good, you're telling me that North Carolina, the rest of the team around him, is making him good, and I don't believe that. I don't think
Right.
that's true. Um,
Yeah.
I think he makes that team infinitely better.
But let's
So
say you're making one left field bet right now.
one left field
Who
bet
are you betting on
for who wins the Heisman.
for who wins the Heisman? And I mean left field. Let's keep it out there.
um,
Like Marvin Harrison's on here.
I
That's
see
it.
that.
Like he's not going to win it. He's got better odds than Joe Milton, which is ridiculous because he is not going to win it.
He's probably not
So
going to win it.
yeah,
Of the guys that are up near the top,
yeah,
uh,
nearish.
I would say Michael Penix.
Michael Penix, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I was thinking like really, really left field.
Well, if you go way down the list of guys,
Because I
Spencer
scrolled
Rattler,
down, I saw the Manning.
man. Well, KJ Jefferson. As
And
I was telling you how good he's going to be at Arkansas this year.
Arch Manning isn't even a starter.
No,
And I
and
was
he's
like,
got.
I'd put $10 and pay out, plus plus 12,500 on that.
Right.
That's not a bad deal.
Cam Rising is way down there.
Cam Rising is way down there. It's kind of a who's who. You got Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, so it's a popularity contest at the top.
Ethan Garbers is ahead of Cameron Rising, and I, I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin with that.
Yeah.
Because he's Ethan Garbers is not on a team that can be. You know what I mean? He's at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah,
me.
according to this, if you scroll further down, it says Heisman Trophy contender says below are the top 5 betting choices: Caleb Williams plus 500, Jordan Travis plus 1200, Penix plus 1200, Bo Nix plus 1200. So they're saying that Caleb Williams is the only player sub 1,000, sub plus 1,000, and
Right.
everyone else is kind of equal farther back. So they're saying that he's a walk away, damn near for it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but I like those odds.
well, they have Jaden Daniels on here as the number 2 bet, if you want to call him that. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's okay. I mean, if you think that Florida State's going to be something.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think they're going to be something, but I mean, and then Quinn Ewers, Texas, I get it. Everybody's you just lost the best stud running back you had, the best thing you've had since Ricky Williams, and now you're going to tell me that you're going to be better this year somehow? No, that's not true.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I thought that's a fun thing to go over is the Heisman odds before the season began.
the odds are terrible. All right.
Yeah, odds are
So,
terrible.
so who's gonna win it? Not who you want to win it. Not who you'd put money on. Who is going to win the Heisman?
I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be Caleb Williams.
Back-to-back winner?
I think they're just gonna drink the Kool-Aid all day and all night, and he's gonna be good enough. If he wins 8, 9, 10 games and has the same kind of yardage, it's gonna be good enough to get it. Yeah. I don't like it, but I think that's what they're gonna do.
You're probably right, barring an injury.
Barring an injury, yes. All of these are barring injuries.
Well, I know, but I mean, that's what I'm getting at. Is I could you foresee
he
it?
did get injured last year,
Right.
So,
Could you? I mean, if Florida State managed to somehow run the table and beats Clemson and is good, and Jaden Daniels is the reason they're good, okay, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Quinn Ewers is that good. I don't think Cade Klubnik is going to be, that Clemson is going to be, 12-0. So that puts me way down the list already, right? I'm almost to Michael Penix.
you're almost too.
Yeah, and Bo Nix for that matter. I don't know. But yeah, if I had to put money on it, Caleb Williams, just because he's the defending champion and everybody thinks he's good already, and for some reason USC's getting all this love, and I don't think it's gonna they're gonna roll out of the gate and be 7-0, and then we'll find out more.
Yeah.
So by that time it may be irrelevant. He may have already won the Heisman.
Maybe. Keep our fingers crossed on that.
All right. Awesome. Got anything else?
Nope. I am all tapped out, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. Well, next week, we're going to talk about the NFL next week?
Yes, next week is the NFL preview.
Next week is the NFL preview, which will be, I think it's a little less interesting because there's only a few teams.
It tends to be less interesting than college.
Right.
Yes.
College football has that element of anything can happen this week. The NFL doesn't necessarily have that, which is the reason why we watch college football because some guy's going to make a mistake and it's going to cost his team a loss, and that's going to cost them a college football playoff opportunity. That happens damn near every week. So, yeah. All right. I like it. So we'll just move along then. And I guess that's all we have. So anyway.
What a show.
It was good. That was good. I have everything written down, so we can't
change. College football is just so hard to talk about because you have to remember so many players and coaches and who's leaving and who's coming and
now you do anyway, yeah. Sure. So those games I had on here for the non-conference games of the year: Florida at Utah, Thursday, August 31st, right? LSU at Florida State, the rematch. That's going to be a big deal for polling purposes. Texas at Alabama, and then Ohio State plays at Notre Dame on the 23rd of September, right in the middle of the season for some reason. That's going to be a big deal because for some reason a win over Notre Dame is always viewed favorably, regardless of how crappy we think Notre Dame and overrated that they are.
Sure, they love Notre Dame.
Everybody does. I just don't understand. With all this realignment, you think Notre Dame? Here's this. I'm gonna throw this out there. You think Notre Dame's gonna get into a conference eventually?
I think they will eventually, but I think it will be one of the last things. Because I think there are lots of people that want them. I think the Big Ten wants them. I think the ACC wants them. I think the SEC wouldn't even mind taking them because that puts their reach into Big Ten territory. Yeah. So I think they all want them. Also, are they ABC or NBC? What's their thing?
NBC.
Well, the ESPN and ABC is the SEC, so that's less likely. ACC is also ESPN. SEC and ACC are ESPN networks also.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know where that would align. I think that they won't join until their contract's up, which I don't know when that is.
I thought they had like a forever contract with NBC, but
really?
Yeah, because the president of NBC was a Notre Dame grad at one point. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, yeah.
Huh.
I feel like they have a never-ending contract.
10-year through the 2025 season.
Okay, that could be. 10-year contract
from the previous 5-year deals
is big. Well, they're trying to lock him in. I mean, I get that, but I don't. The Notre Dame games that are on TV, that are on NBC, I don't want to watch most of them.
Yeah, most of them don't matter to me.
Yeah, you're going to see him play USC. Okay, I'll watch that. If it's at Notre Dame, it'll be on NBC. If it's at USC,
when they play Ohio State or Michigan, it's usually fun to watch. They play Clemson this year. I'll probably watch that one.
Yeah, I mean they got a tough schedule, and I think ranking them 13th is pretty optimistic.
Generous.
Yeah. So there's a lot of teams. We didn't even get into the top 25 really. So
true.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it next week when we have some wins and losses to talk about.
I like that. We'll have a couple.
We will have a couple. All right, so that's going to do it for today. Again, we're on YouTube every week. We're on Facebook under the Best Lamm Sports Show. You can email us, and I don't have any music playing. What am I doing? Here you go. The jazzy music. Anyway, you can the Best Lamm Sports Show on Facebook. You can email us lambsports@gmail.com. I want to thank our sponsors, The Range and Yakima, my boss, Kitty Yarns, Stave and Stone Wine Estates of Hood River, all of the sports places that I always name here. I really don't need to, but I do it anyway. This has been a Brain Rock production, a division of Lonely Tree Media, LLC. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk NFL next week.